Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SLSO Stories live event. These virtual events let us go deep with musicians and experts on a specific topic. I'm Tim Munro, creative partner with the SLSO, and today we're getting an inside look at some of the links between classical and popular music. And I'm joined by an all-star crew by SLSO Music Director Stéphane Denève and Assistant Conductor Symphony Childress. But first, a very important housekeeping thing. Please ask questions using the chat function. The button should be below the screen. Make sure your messages are set to panelists and attendees. It's going to be an action-packed hour, but I'm for sure going to get to audience questions and comments. And please do mention popular music of your youth, things that you loved, any links you particularly see between classical and popular music. And a special thanks to the SLSO's 2021-2022 SLSO Stories live sponsor, Washington University Physicians. I'm delighted to welcome our guests, Stéphane and Stéphanie. Please join us. Thank you for spending time with us this afternoon.
Hello, Tim.
Hello.
Hello,
So
Stéphanie.
I wanted to start off in your youth. So perhaps with Stéphane, you and Stéphane and Stéphanie shared with me a wonderful list of all sorts of popular music from throughout their lives. But I want to start at the beginning. So Stéphane, what is the first time you remember kind of hearing a popular song or something playing in the background, or maybe something that your parents loved?
Well, we were not listening to good evening, everybody, by the way. We were not listening to music at home. So actually, it was TV or it was radio in the car or the truck of my father and the car of my mother. And it's hard to really remember precisely what is, the first song or the first artist that really shocked me or impressed me. Maybe there is a French singer called Claude François that I liked very, very much when I was very, very, very young. That's right now the oldest souvenir.
Oh, I love that. Well, so we actually have a track set up of Jacques Brel. Can you talk a little bit about Jacques Brel and how he came to your life and what sort of impact that made?
Well, Jacques Brel is, the man, the legend, is certainly one of the most important artists. Is Belgian, but of course he was very famous, extremely famous in France, and a favorite of my parents, actually, my father especially, and I have the feeling that we always saw his songs on TV, and I think people know the most famous one of all, but there are so many I love. He's a poet. He's a real artist, and it's a Ne me quitte pas. I don't know if you know that one.
And that's what I have set up. So why don't we just listen to just a little moment from that? This is the first time I'm attempting to share my screen on this, so let's hope that it all goes according to plan.
Ne me quitte pas. Il faut oublier tout s'oublier, qui s'enfuit déjà. Oublier le temps des malentendus et le temps perdu à savoir comment. Oublier ces heures qui tuaient parfois à coups de pourquoi. Cœur du bonheur, ne me quitte pas, ne me quitte pas, ne me quitte pas, ne me quitte. Moi, je t'offrirai.
It feels terrible to interrupt it. It's so compelling. Every moment he's like drawing you in with this intensity, and just like the layers of sweat.
I have no idea how famous he is in the US. I mean, for us, he's like an icon. It's really so important. And all his songs are basically poetry. They are studied at school. I remember studying some of his songs at school, and he's both viewed as a writer, as a poet, and as an incredible interpreter, like so intense, so incredible. So if you don't know him, there is a song about, I mean, it's all about crazy love, and it's amazing. But this one, I must say, the text is extremely touching. Everybody, I think, has been there sometime.
Stephanie, you also mentioned a number of French language singers, and I think Jacques Brel was among them. Can you talk a little bit about your sort of upbringing and how maybe particularly French language songs fed into it?
Yeah, I mean, Jacques Brel was always a big one for us. I mean, being brought up in a multicultural household, I think I had a lot of musical influences growing up, and obviously French music was a big part of it. But it was only really when I got to my teens that there was one song in particular, which unfortunately isn't in French, but it's now a huge part of French popular culture, from a film called La Boum. And Stéphane and I have spoken about this film at great length, because it really is just the iconic film of the French kind of adolescent generation. I mean, it was released, I think, in the 80s, but it's still, we all watched it, my generation, we all watched it at school, and we all dreamt of going to a party, and, you'd see someone across a room and they'd slow dance with you. And so that brings up a lot of nostalgic memories. But apart from that song, there is one artist in particular that I have a great love for, and I think Stéphane does as well, which is Serge Gainsbourg, whom I discovered slightly later in life. I think his songs definitely venture into more mature territory, let's say. But the way that he plays with words, I think the French language is so rich, in any case, but what he manages to do with it, finding kind of a different language within the language and twisting words, and there's a lot of wordplay, and he plays a lot on kind of traditional pop forms as well, and twisting them as well. And I think for me that was a big revelation, knowing that just like classical composers could take very strict, structured forms, and then you'd move one piece of the puzzle slightly this way and that way, and to kind of shape it in your own individualized way. I think that was nice to know that pop music could do just the same, and perhaps to a more intense degree as well.
That's wonderful. Actually, we do have a track of Serge Gainsbourg, and I'm going to butcher this, so please help me. Le
Poinçonneur des Lilas. Le Poinçonneur des Lilas. So,
do you want to introduce that, Stéphane?
Yes. First, if you may, I just have to laugh, because when she speaks about the song before, from La Boum, from the party with Sophie Marceau, she speaks about a film in the 80s. And I was a teenager in the 80s, and I remember actually being in love with Sophie Marceau, like all my generation. And it's so strange that you, Stéphanie, being kind of almost 30 years younger than me, actually still know indeed this song. That's quite funny. But Le Poinçonneur des Lilas, it's a fabulous song indeed, which speaks about, in the old time in Paris at the subway station, there was the people that were making a little hole in the ticket in order to say that the ticket was used. And he speaks about a poor guy that has his life, and he just makes little holes all his life. Just he goes every day, it's a kind of robotic work, and he has to do that all day, but he's dreaming about another life. But actually he does little holes, and at the end he will die and will go in another hole. And the whole thing is a nightmare about a poor person that wants to escape a simple, horrible, boring life and dream of another. So it's a great song.
Wow. I mean, that's already draws me in. All right, so we'll watch a minute or so of this.
Poinçonneur des Lilas. Je suis le poinçonneur des lilas, le gars qu'on croise et qu'on ne regarde pas. Y a pas de soleil sous la terre, drôle de croisière. Pour tuer l'ennui, j'ai dans ma veste les extraits du Reader Digest. Et dans ce bouquin, y a écrit que dégasse la coule douce à Miami. Pendant ce temps que je fais le zouave au fond de la cave, paraît qu'il y a pas de sous-métier, moi je fais des trous dans les billets. Je fais des trous, des petits trous, encore des petits trous, des petits trous, des petits trous, toujours des petits trous, des trous de seconde classe, des trous de première classe. Je fais des trous, des petits trous, encore des petits trous, des petits trous, des petits trous, toujours des petits trous, des petits trous, des petits trous, des petits trous, des petits trous. Je suis le poinçonneur des lilas pour un valide changé.
I mean, wow. What's so completely different to Jacques Brel. Stephanie, I noticed you just enjoying the words.
I mean, it's something. Also, I have a CD of his with his top 50 songs in my car, and I remember whenever I was driving from Cambridge to London from like uni back home, I would listen to it, and this was the first track. So I definitely know like all the words by heart, and it's so kind of intricate, but it does also slip off the tongue really easily. It's this kind of weird mix, and whenever I hear songs, I just can't help myself. I'll be lip syncing along.
And I mean, the delivery couldn't be more different. Also, it's like almost diffident, or like just not showing anything somehow.
Yeah, he's definitely the maverick of French music, the bad boy of French music. I think especially during his later performances, as we go on into the 70s, 80s, 70s in particular, he becomes quite belligerent on stage and quite provocative, to say the least. There are lots of footage of him on stage later in his life, and you can tell that he's definitely a bit of a rebel.
That's fabulous.
Something funny is that when I was very young, so this guy was actually called Feuille de Chou, he looked like a cabbage because he has big ears and he has this face not totally perfect by the normal beauty standard or something. Yet, because of his talent and he seduced, he's very famous in France, a lot of extremely beautiful, iconic actresses and singers, and he has really, and so when I was very young, I thought like, oh my God, that's great. Actually, talent in music can really help you.
So you wanted to be the cool seducer yourself.
No. I was just joking that at least I thought like, okay, if you're not an Apollon, you can still indeed, like with humor, let's say, to start with, and talent, indeed, you can, as a man, you're lucky enough to be able to seduce a lot of people. And sorry, that was just a help when I was
well, you do musically seduce us week after week. We feel very carried along. I want to get back to some of the kind of formative influences and the interesting kind of popular musical worlds that you've both kind of inhabited. But I do want to start to touch on the links between popular and classical music, because even in just the ways that you're talking about these artists, they sound almost like you could be talking about a great classical singer, or the way that a composer takes something straightforward and twists something and raises it up or changes it completely. How has popular music in your lives like interacted with the worlds of classical music for you? Maybe Stéphane?
Well, it's music to start with. Like, as we will explore next year as well, music has definitely no boundaries for sure. The thing is just the form. The form of a song of popular music is usually very concise. It's very short. I mean, yeah, you have rarely any songs that really last more than 5, 6, 7 minutes maximum. Therefore, you have to find some gesture, some very direct atmosphere, some poetic content, like which is very, 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 very convincing in a very short time. And I think that always has been for me something mysterious, is why some songs are so catchy, why suddenly why even a song is a world success beyond any type of culture all over the world. And I mean, when I was a teenager, I was actually quite a big fan of Michael Jackson, and I bought his album Thriller. That's the first time in my life I think I bought a pop album with my own pocket money. It was the album Thriller, and I was amazed to see that his style of music would speak to every type of culture. Is well known all over the world, and what is it? And this is always a mystery for me of what is good music. And so it is fascinating to try to analyze that with the simplicity of a song, which often has, you know, some very square rhythm. You know, if you have I don't know if you notice that, but all the songs always work by 4 bars and 4 bars. So if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, usually you will see that in whatever song you are, you change to another verse or to another chorus or something. It's so extremely organized and square, and yet there is an incredible variety, and it's infinite. So when you see all you can do with 3 chords and very simple grouping of 4 bars, you have hope that you can still write a lot of symphony in C majors.
That's great. That's great. I mean, there's that famous quote from Arnold Schoenberg, you know, the great doyen of throwing things out with the baby out with the bathwater, that there's many more symphonies still to be written in C major. You know, I love that sense.
The song proves it, because really it's impressive all what you can still write today with the same chords, the really same chords.
Actually, I do have, just because I have Thriller set up, I'm going to share that, and we can just enjoy just a little of that world.
Ooh. Oh, that's a full movie.
Yeah, this is the full movie. Okay, let's see.
Oh.
I can.
Oh yeah, that will be very long.
Okay, maybe this is the wrong time. See, this is where the sharing. I need a producer.
I'm happy to to just share that. When I saw that for the very first time on TV, it was a big deal. It was a release of the video clip, and video clip were more and more important and more sophisticated and complex. And actually, I think really a big part of France was there on a Saturday, I think at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where they will release the video clip and put it on TV. And we all watched that, and I really was scared. I was really frightened by the eyes at the end, and the yellow eyes, and then the transformation into a werewolf. And and I think I'm still traumatized by this video clip. That was maybe the first horror movie I ever saw in my life. But the music is great, and the choreography is brilliant.
Stephanie, how do you respond to that notion of sort of complexity through simplicity, or even how that world might relate to classical music?
I mean, I really don't have a lot to add in addition to what you and Stéphane have said. I think for me, you know, growing up with popular music is something that I think is important to all of us, because there is that degree of nostalgia that sets in, you know, just right now when we're talking about the music that we used to listen to when we grow up. I think the maturing process is very important within the world of pop music, because not only are you discovering things new every year, and, you know, obviously there are the charts and people are releasing singles, you know, every day, but that pleasure of kind of going back to something that is so comforting, and sounds that you know, that you recognize, but also sounds that I think, like with any great work of art, you know, for example, I'm a huge Queen fan, like a huge Queen fan. I have to give a big shout out to my mum, who's also watching this Zoom now, because she introduced me to Queen, and back in the UK. But like every time I go back to either their music videos or just listening to their songs, there's always something new that I discover. And that's, for me, what defines a great work of art. It's something that's like an onion. You just sort of peel back the layers. There's layer after layer, and there's always something new to discover, whether that's in the music, the text, or the ideas. Or, you know, just simply you as a person, you change over time and the song takes on a different meaning. So for me, that's probably one of the most important aspects of popular music.
And you know, if I may add to that, we speak about Thriller of Michael Jackson, but it's orchestrated. I mean, it's produced by Quincy Jones, and I must say, I'm amazed by how it's like an orchestration for an orchestra. You know, the choice of the different layers and how it's just balanced each other. It's just brilliant. And when I was a child, I said I knew this French singer called, I mean, I didn't know personally, but I love this French singer called Claude François. And to my great surprise, much later in life, I met actually Jean-Claude Petit, who is the guy that arranged all the songs. And I was able to see the score. And to my great surprise, this kind of very, you know, disco type orchestra writing, I thought it was more or less improvised in the studio, and you know, they would repeat it. No, and he showed me the score is totally written. He wrote every single part of it, and so there was a lot of thinking indeed in that too, that really relates to the way a composer would orchestrate. So that's another interesting.
I mean, the intricacy, and I want to go back to Queen because actually I have a selection that you suggested, Stephanie. You suggested "I Was Born to Love You," so I have a little of that where we can listen to. But the intricacy, like going back to the Beach Boys, which was just like, for me, just a sound. Like they just sounded like the Beach Boys. But I have a friend who did a PhD and made transcriptions of a number of these songs. And the intricacy of the inner voice movement, of the strange harmonies, of the like leaps, the attention to detail, you know, to craft something like that is so astonishing. I'm going to share my screen.
An amazing feeling coming through. I was born to love you with every single beat of my heart. Yes, I was born to take care of you every single day of my life. You are the one for me, I am the man for you. You were made for me, you're my ecstasy. If I was given every opportunity, I'd kill for your love. Hey. So take a chance with me, let me romance with you. I'm caught in a dream and my dreams come true. So hard to believe this is happening to me. An amazing feeling coming through.
I mean, you're just like
so
you're
good.
just like grinning from ear to ear, Stephanie.
I mean, also I will say that's more the Freddie Mercury side of Queen. But I mean, just as a, you know, on a side note, I just think for me, like some of these like icons in general were just so important. You know, perhaps Stéphane, it's the same for you with Michael Jackson. It really was like, it was him. It was like, and for me, it was Freddie Mercury who was just like the most amazing thing. And I think that's also a part of popular music that I really appreciate, is kind of how, well, I appreciate, and also, you know, it's quite strange how we kind of idolize these people. But at the same time, I think when you're growing up, it's, you know, the only thing that I wanted to be when I grew up was Freddie Mercury as a 3 or 4 year old. And
Oh.
in a way, it's still the case.
Did you have outfits?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Outfits. And I'd put like a little moustache on, and I'd like dance around my house, and my mum would sort of have her hands in her lap and say, "What have we done?"
Now you mentioned just like how your feelings about these works of art kind of change over time. Like, how does your relationship to Queen change? Because at that time it was like, it must have been as much almost about the image as it was about the music. But like, how has that shifted then over time?
I think, you know, like Stéphane said before, you definitely start to appreciate the actual craft that went behind all of those songs. And, you know, if any of you have seen the film Bohemian Rhapsody, they detail the process of how they made that song Bohemian Rhapsody, and how, you know, it was all about trying to come up with a rock song that was, that was very long and that had form and development and variation and stuff and different sounds. And I think as you grow older, you just appreciate that process even more, which in a way deepens your love for it, because you realize, like, gosh, this is really something that people worked hard to achieve. So yeah, it does change over time.
What about for you, Stéphane? Because I notice in your list, you have a long list of current artists. And I wonder, like, do you still go back with nostalgia or joy or a new understanding to older music?
It's very random. The thing which is interesting with popular music indeed is that you encounter it that you want or not. I mean, you hear it a bit on TV, and sadly, the classical music, you rarely encounter classical music randomly on TV because it's just not there enough. So, but and then on radio, on restaurants, and I mean, you hear things. And now I do have a great help, which is my wife and my daughter. They really listen a lot to music of today, really in the car. So I always have to go with the flow and with their choice. And I discovered a lot of beautiful artists of today thanks to them. The biggest one I remember was a few years ago at the very, very start of Billie Eilish. It was still very, very new. And I I feel very proud that actually Alma just was showing me this artist. I had no idea she was so young. I thought it was just an artist I didn't know. But right away I said, like, oh my God, he's an exceptional voice. I mean, who is that? And I was really just right from the start saying, like, okay, this is very special. And yes, she delivered. But that was really at the very start, the very first songs that I don't know why my daughter was very up to date, and she really discovered Billie Eilish, like many people, I'm sure, but really at the very start of her success.
Yeah, Billie Eilish is one of those artists who, when we're talking about attention to detail, I began watching, there's a wonderful documentary about the making of her first album, just like her and her brother in their living room, or in their bedroom, just working tirelessly in finessing the sound. And she was so focused on just the detail and the sound of every element. It's just yeah.
There's three artists today that really fascinates me about that. That's her. And that's also Jacob Collier, who I found absolutely incredible in a craft level, and also a Belgian artist with huge ear and called Stromae. And I think he starts to be famous in the US too, but it's the beginning in the US, but here it's huge. So those three artists have in common that they really master the craft and all the digital aspect of music, and they found incredibly poetic, samples, and the sample revolution, of course, is huge because they can use whatever they want and use it now in a very simple way. The computer has really changed the access to all of that, and so that's quite interesting to see this young generation being so savvy and so creative with the samples, with the quality of the sound. I love Björk for the same reason as well. This Icelandic artist who is now more established and a bit older. And Björk is also an artist that we look for a lot of sound that are like the Madeleine of Proust, that makes you right away. It's like they use sounds like smell has an effect on you. Like, you just smell something and it reminds you your youth, your some place, and that they really use samples the same way, like a perfume, and I love that.
That's so beautifully expressed. And just that sense of really reaching out in new ways. Jacob Collier, I came to know of, and I wrote the name of the three artists you mentioned in the chat, through his incredibly popular music theory videos. I mean, essentially like music theory videos. The incredible complexity with the way that he can hear pitch and harmony, and is like astonishing and virtuosic.
Yes, if you don't know Jacob Collier, have a look to, for instance, Moon River. He arranged a lot of songs that are not from him, but he arranged them just in a vocal way. But he sings every part himself, and he makes incredibly complex chords. It's really very, very, very impressive. Like, you know, we should never anyway be condescending as classical artists, you know, with popular, of course, genre, presuming that those people have maybe less kind of background in theory and musical whatever studies. When you see somebody like Jacob Collier, I must say I'm quite the opposite. I'm like, wow, he has a lot to teach me with harmony, because that's incredible what he does.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm just going to go through a few comments in the chat. People have been talking about first loves, things that they are. There's a wonderful, Betty puts in a selection that really bridges the two worlds, which is All by Myself by Eric Carmen, that uses Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto.
Yes.
There's lots of people loving Queen and Freddie Mercury. And a comment from Caitlin at the SLSO, who says that the SLSO will perform the music of Queen on June 10th. Mary loves Styx. Patricia grew up with Elvis Presley and folk music. Just like such an incredibly rich and diverse kind of musical world out there. Karen says Her, or maybe it's H-E-R, I don't know how we say it. Her is an amazingly gifted musician, composer, and singer, a child prodigy. KJ says Björk with orchestra would be fantastic. So, Stéphane, you need to make that happen.
Yes, I would love that, because I'm a big fan since already Sugar Cube, when first group, and then later. And I am actually particularly fan of an album she did called Vespertine. I don't know how you pronounce it in English. And I had to share this love with Kevin Putz, you know, the composer Kevin Putz, who we played already and will play again actually in the next year. We have a big world premiere coming from him, and you know, he's born in St. Louis and he lives in New York now, and he's extremely successful. He has an opera at the Met in November, and he had a symphony actually inspired by Vespertine, by the album of Björk, and he loves her too. And so I was so happy to be able to share my love with that. And I can't resist to tell you a little story, that my wife and I, we were watching, as my wife was pregnant, the movie Dancer in the Dark. And it's a very kind of a musical, it's a beautiful movie from Lars von Trier, very intense, very sad. And the character that Björk plays in this movie is called Selma. And as we watched that, I said, oh my God, I just love Björk. I said to my wife, and I said, like, and Selma is such a beautiful name, but I just don't want another name with a S, because I have a little lisp, and I don't want to spend my entire life like I do with you. My wife is called Osa. So with only one consonant is a S already. So I said, like, I'm sorry, the name of our child, we didn't know if it was a girl or a boy, but will not be with an S in it. And so I said, like, too bad, because I really love Selma, the character of Björk in that movie, Dancer in the Dark. And my wife said, like, right away, oh, but there is actually a Swedish name, which is very near. It's not Selma, but it's Alma. And I said, like, it's maybe an old Swedish name for you, but it's also a very kind of famous name, because it's the wife of Alma Mahler, of Gustav Mahler, Alma Mahler. And we look at each other and we thought, like, that's it. And that's why we decided for Alma with 14 now.
That's so beautiful. Actually, I have a little fragment from Dancer in the Dark. Why don't we watch just a little of, I think it might be yeah, I think I have this set up right.
Oh yeah, I've seen it all.
I've seen it all. I have seen the trees. I have seen the willow leaves dancing in the breeze. I've seen a man killed by his best friend, and lives that were over before they were spent. I've seen what I was, and I know what I'll be. I've seen it
I love this,
Ah.
this singer. Yes, I would love to make music with her. That's a dream.
Okay, well, we'll make it. We're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen, Stéphane. Stephanie, actually, just seeing Dance in the Dark makes me want to mention that you mentioned in your email that movie musicals have been were an incredibly important kind of early influence.
Absolutely. I mean, so I grew up watching a lot of kind of classic films from the 40s and 50s, namely Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, with Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell. I will say for a long time I was a big Jane Russell fan, more than I was a Marilyn Monroe fan. But I remember they have just some incredible songs, and I mean, obviously with the sort of old Hollywood movie magic, the delivery of all of those is just absolute perfection. I remember in that film there's a song that Jane Russell sings, Ain't There Anyone Here for Love, which is supposed to be, you know, she's looking for a man, and there's an Olympic, the American Olympic team is on the same boat as them. And so they're doing like all their workouts and lifting weights and stuff. And just the choreography around that whole concept was just so amusing. And also, you know, films like, I'm a huge fan of Rita Hayworth, and this is really going back a bit, but her film Gilda was a really big influence on me, and particularly that really iconic song where she's in this gorgeous black satin dress. And as I found out recently, she was like 6 months pregnant when she did that. And the couturier the clothing designer had to really sort of hide her baby bump. But she performs this incredibly sort of sensual dance called Put the Blame on Mame. And I think, you know, as a young woman growing up, you do just see these images of these sort of very glamorous women, but to, you know, just to know that they are very talented, and you know, it's not just all good looks. They really have something to them that makes, you know, a twinkle in their eye, which is just so incredible. And I think something that is not so common today, let's say, in certain pop artists. It's definitely a different type of class in a way.
Wow. If I add to you want, you know, the thing with music, you want to share all the time. And indeed, of course, in America, I mean, you made some of the most amazing musical movies, and so no need to speak about all this genre that is so rich. But if people don't know, I would like to share something that really changed my life. It's the movies from Jacques Demy, Demy. And they are kind of strange musicals in a sense that even kind of operatic, because there's almost no text spoken. They kind of sing the most simple, you know, like a you know, give me the salt for my little steak. You know, they will, whatever, like, you know, they will be just singing the most common dialogue. And it's a music by Michel Legrand, who I love, a great jazz man, a great composer, very special. And maybe the most iconic of those movies, if you don't know any of them, is The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. So voila, if you don't know The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, please, you know, buy the download or whatever. I pay you back if you don't like it. It's just so beautiful.
Watch it and make sure to have a box of tissues nearby.
Oh yes, oh yes.
It hits you hard. Oh my goodness.
Well, and talking about the attention to detail, attention to every sort of kind of expressive and visual and musical detail, that movie is just astonishing. It just, the colors, the way that the visuals are used is like part of the score almost. Oh, KJ is mentioning in the chat that so much of the recent movie La La Land was an homage to Umbrellas. Yeah. But the weird thing about Umbrellas is that, yeah, because it's the whole movie is basically like a weird jazz recitative. It's
yes,
like
exactly.
It's all sung. I mean, you will never regret watching Umbrellas of Cherbourg once, because it's such a unique kind of artistic object. Okay, we only have about 10 minutes left, so I do want to get to a question about if somebody is watching who is completely new to classical music, their only frame of reference are the kind of different popular artists we're talking about. What are pieces composers, concerts, experiences you might recommend?
Wow.
And also, people in the chat, I encourage you to make your own suggestions for thoughts. Sorry, Stephanie.
No, I just think it's for me it's a tricky one, because obviously, as we've seen, popular music is so varied. It's as varied, you know, than classical music, and it really depends on your tastes. I think for me, just approaching it with an open mind and just knowing that there is just as much variety in classical music as there is in the popular genres. And I think that's sometimes from what I hear, that's kind of what intimidates people, is that they think it is this kind of big pillar of Western art music that has to be kind of conquered from all sides and stuff. But really, it just, you know, it's like you will get hooked on one artist through just one little song that you just hear sort of, you know, in the supermarket or something. You're like, oh, I quite like that, and let's explore that. I think it's the same thing with classical music. You can just hear one piece of music by a composer and say, oh, I like that, or I don't like that. And then you do your own research and you say, oh, this woman or man has written more, and let's find out more about their other compositions. So I think it really is the similar process of discovery as that in popular music.
I mean, of course, there are for me, something important is to decide if you do for music that is vocal or not. There are some movies, for instance, where the music is really so much in between, like West Side Story of Bernstein is you know, is a musical, and but yet there is this I don't know, the duet, like a boy like that who killed your brother. It's really, we are in opera, and suddenly you can really, I think, help somebody to enter in the world of opera, maybe with this kind of thing. But there are also some music that in the repertoire that have this instant kind of love story feeling, you know, like, of course, Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto No. 2, for instance, that indeed has this kind of filmic intensity somehow that you can very easily make your own film. And so that's maybe a way for people to who really don't know at all the classical music to enter. But I still believe nothing can beat the great classics. I mean, like a Beethoven 5 first movement, I think, is still one of the best impact you can imagine if you hear it for the first time, especially live.
Yeah, and in the chat, there's a lot of recommendations about particularly works of classical music in film and also through musicals. There's a recommendation from Beverly to listen to John Williams, who you have actually, Stéphane, performed often alongside more established kind of classical concert works. Stéphane, another time when we've talked, you have pointed to the music of living composers also as like the way in a certain sense.
Yes, actually, that's an interesting thing. I will make an example. My wife was not at all connected to classical music. She had never attended a classical music concert ever. She loves music and she knows a lot about rock and many things. But and very early in our relationship, the concert that she loved the most was on the Transmigration of Soul of John Adams, and I thought that's interesting. Actually, she does connect to this music more than just a Tchaikovsky symphony, for instance. And I do believe that today we are in a golden era again. There's a lot of really good music written today, which connect with the world we are in. It's in sync, and I think the younger generation, and they feel it somehow, and they have no problem to swallow the complexity sometimes of the harmonies. It's so I would say indeed there's really a lot of hope with the music of today to attract new audience that will indeed just connect to that more than with actually the core romantic repertoire or something like that. It's yeah, I believe strongly in that.
I love that. And many of the young artists we've been talking about, young popular artists of just like impeccable, incredible skill. I mean, there's so much in the young generation. Another thing I want to mention of yours, Stéphane, is starting to think about the concert experience in a different way. So the SLSO has the series of crafted concerts. I mean, is that kind of, trying to change the concert experience a little bit? Before you answer, I'll mention one other example I saw of this on a video, but I wish I could have seen it live, which is Ivan Fischer, the Hungarian conductor, did a project in Berlin where the entire orchestra they removed all of the seats in the concert hall, and the orchestra was spread throughout the entire hall, and all of the audience members could sit in amongst the orchestra. So I wonder, just like more broadly, like what it might be to do different, different presentation.
But I need to ask you something now because it's a little bit spooky. You know what I'm doing this week, right?
I don't know. I probably should.
Because that's a very weird. Okay, so today I was in Bruges, this beautiful town in Belgium, and there is a wonderful hall called the Concertgebouw, like Amsterdam, Concertgebouw Bruges. And all this week, I have 10 concerts called Surround. And the idea is to welcome 240 members of the audience within the orchestra. And so what we do, I will show you a photo. Sorry, maybe like that is better. Voilà. So that's what we do this week 10 times. I hope people can see. So the orchestra is in a circular way, and I'm in the middle. And actually, the audience is mixing entirely with the orchestra. So you have basically, the orchestra is like 85 pieces, and then you have these people, and we all sit together and very close, like in between the musicians. And it's an incredible experience for the audience indeed, because they really are inside of the sound of an orchestra and they see the interaction. And this morning we were rehearsing without the audience, but so the musicians were really far away from each other. And I was thinking, well, strangely enough, we've been practicing so much during the COVID time that it was not really a challenge, and we kind of stayed together despite having really the whole orchestra in so that is something that I think is a very interesting experience, and I'm doing it for the first time in Belgium, but let's hope we can repeat that. It's indeed a very, very interesting moment, and yeah.
Yeah, that's that's so great. I'm so glad you're having that experience. I can't wait to talk more with you about that. Stephanie, have you had any experiences like that, or any dreams about creating new concert sort of experiences?
I don't have any experience, I don't think, but I have a lot of dreams about that, and trying to find different ways of reconfiguring the orchestra, maybe not on a permanent basis, but just trying things out. I've always dreamt of doing a Beethoven symphony with all the musicians on one level, having the strings on one side and the woodwinds on another. Maybe more like early Beethoven symphonies, Mozart symphonies as well. And also, I mean, I'm a huge Messiaen fan, and I feel with his music, which is so kind of grand and, quite literally celestial, there is so many different configurations, different spaces as well that you can find to bring music to different people, but also to make it sometimes a type of performance art. I think there are some pieces that require a bit of that flair and a bit of something extra to it. So yes, a lot of plans, and yeah, watch this space.
Oh, I love it. Beverly in the chat says, let's do it. Very cool for different venues. So if you are interested in the SLSO exploring those sorts of ideas, please email. I actually don't even know what the general SLSO email address would be, but Stéphane has already said he would love to try it. Gina says crafted concerts attracted my husband to the symphony. And I want to finish, we have just a couple minutes left together, and I want to finish just with an absolute desert island, a desert island question. If you had to pick, I'll go kind on you and say you have 3 pieces of popular music that you can bring with yourself to a desert island. What would you bring for those long days? And
I'll be provocative, meaning if I had only 3 discs I could bring, I'm afraid I don't think there will be popular music there. And it's a very interesting issue, which I don't know how to articulate. Like, how come that I can never get tired of some of the classical music that I really admire the most? Like, I think I can spend the infinity of time, or let's say the last part of my life in a desert island, with the St. John Passion of Bach, for instance. And which, even if I love indeed, you know, Jacques Brel, Serge Gainsbourg, I mean, I would not be able to spend so much time. And I know that I get a little bit tired of some popular music after a while. And I don't know exactly why is that. Sometimes I feel maybe it has to do with the project itself, meaning to create a masterwork of music, you have to create in such a big dimension. So it's a bit like the difference between building a house and building a cathedral. Maybe that's an analogy that works. I'm not sure. Like, of course, it's extremely admirable to build a very nice house, a little house so well crafted, whatever. Yet you have to admire the architects that were able to do, you know, an immense cathedral with, and that's maybe the same issue there. Maybe indeed you have to also admire the fact that people like indeed Beethoven or Bach or voilà, were able to just build those immense cathedral of music that seems to be so vast that you can inhabit them permanently for very long. And I'm not sure I will feel that, you know, the same. So voilà, on a desert island, I'm not sure I would take any piece of popular music. I hope I'm not shocking.
We appreciate your candor and your provocation. Stephanie, care to provoke us further?
I will no. But what I will say is that I completely agree with Stéphane, and I'm really 100% agree. However, if I'm on a desert island, I think I need one song to at least dance to whilst no one is looking. So I would have to choose something like, I don't know, September by Earth, Wind and Fire. But that's just because I'm on a desert island and no one can see my terrible dance moves. So there we go.
Well, that's a beautiful way to end. It's been so great to spend time with you, Stephanie and Stéphane. Thank you for your selections and for your personal stories. I also want to thank all of the people who chimed in on chat. Thank you again for being part of the conversation. And I want to thank the Stewart Family Foundation and Washington University physicians for their support. Keep an eye out for our next Stories Live event in May. Check your inbox in the next week or so for more information. Thank you for joining in again with questions and thoughts. And Stéphane and Stephanie, let's do the Zoom thing and wave bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.